Hi and welcome to our webinar focusing on emerging talent, or in other words, spotting and developing future leaders in organisations as early as possible in their career. We're going to look at why this is a particularly important area of talent management strategy, and also a way that you can both accelerate your high potential people and at the same time avoid disengaging those who may not be so suited to a fast track at this time. In fact, I'm going to stick my neck out and say that if you get your emerging talent process right, it could lead to a wider change that boosts the engagement of all your people. So I'm Richard Ogden, and I collaborate with clients on many different types of talent management projects. And in line with our other webinars in the series, we're following the employee life cycle. And emerging talent, we feel, is such an important part of building an effective talent pipeline in your business that we've given it its own slice of the cake to itself. So why so? Why is emerging talent becoming a very commonly seen phrase now in the world of HR and talent management? Well, in a sentence, it's a vital part of building a more agile and resilient organisation. And I want to talk you through 5 key benefits or reasons for adopting a strong emerging talent programme. There may well be more, but here are some headlines to get us started. Retention of talented people. It's a very commonly held misperception that to get ahead you have to take lots of sideways moves, but it's just not the case that you have to take these kind of crab style moves in and out of businesses. Research actually shows that high potential people are much more likely to be accelerated quickly within a business where they're able to show their commitment and that their company players are able to prove their worth. And PricewaterhouseCoopers is often quoted as saying the cost of losing somebody is roughly the same as their annual salary when you take into account all of the time and energy lost in productivity and getting new people up to speed. And relying on buying in people is risky. And I would argue that actually the real cost of the business could be a lot more, because it's what goes out of the door in the heads of these people that might be even more invaluable. It's the knowledge and expertise that resides in there. It's often discussed about the brain drain from the top of the organisation as the baby boomer generation approaches retirement, and how this is a key risk to the intellectual capital in a business. But I would argue that increasingly in our knowledge-based economy now, and given the rapid advances in technology, that it's becoming more and more the case that we are losing expertise in a more bottom-up way in organisations. So many younger, less senior people now hold a great deal of experience and knowledge that is business critical. And this isn't just the case for traditionally high-tech companies. With the rapid changes in technology, it's really spelling the end of business as usual for many industries. Organisational commitment on the part of employees. One of the top reasons that people give for leaving an organisation is a perceived lack of career opportunity or progression. And what could be more demotivating than seeing people brought in from outside to keep filling leadership positions? Presenting a very clear signpost towards career pathways within organisations and developing people from a grassroots level is much more likely to build commitment in your employees. And related to this area is very much the engagement, or what you might call the psychological capital, priceless resource in the business. And there's a lot of research coming out in recent years linking engagement to very hard-edged measures of business such as productivity, return on assets and financial shareholder return. So it's a very big sort of growth area in organisational development. And thinking about wider benefits to the culture of an organisation, if you get your process right and really put people into the driving seat of their own career, you shape a culture where development is something that people do for themselves. It's not something that they wait to be done to them. So let's look now at perhaps some of the problems of taking a more traditional approach at developing emerging talent. And by that, I guess I mean perhaps nominating people into what you might call talent pools and using perhaps an assessment event like an assessment centre, which is perhaps quite a common approach in this area. Let's hear from some of the voices of our key customers, the participants in the programs. So my manager doesn't appreciate my challenging style. And it's interesting to note that there is a key difference between performance and actual potential, and some of the indicators, some of the sort of behavioural precursors of future potential can actually be a little bit negative, a little bit disruptive. I was talking with a client recently who was looking to attract people into a more project management career path from across the wider sort of corporate organisation. And when we were looking at things that we might want to spot in our high potential people, some of them are actually kind of negative behaviours, perhaps being a bit pushy or challenging, for instance. Talented people are a long-term asset for a business, and they're really too valuable to leave solely to managers' discretions. And that's why we need to be very clear about our talent model, what we're looking for, to help our managers and people understand what talent is all about. An assessment centre, and you aren't telling me what's on it? Well, I'm the sort of person who likes to take my time to learn something, to get really good at it. And of course, perhaps taking a snapshot through a more assessment centre approach, it's a bit paradoxical, because we see that to be a bit more objective, that we want to treat everyone in a standardised manner, and it's probably the fault of us psychologists, actually. We often call these assessment centres a work simulation, but it's a bit of a misnomer, really, because an assessment centre couldn't really be further from reality. When have you ever had to throw yourself into a very important career-changing event without actually having any time to prepare beforehand? Could actually be discriminatory against people that like to take their time to reflect and learn. Are tortoises, if you like, that might ultimately have more potential and end up winning the race. And related to that area, assessment centres can bias against more introverted colleagues, potentially. Okay, I'm not leadership ready perhaps yet, but I tell you what, I'm 100% committed and determined to get there. With behavioural based exercises such as an assessment centre, there can be a bias towards assessing readiness for a leadership role rather than actual long-term potential. And little emphasis can be given to the importance of measuring people's underlying drive and ambition, which of course is one of the key precursors of future progression in an organisation. So relying on a one-off event can be dangerous, because of course we're taking a snapshot of an individual in a moment in time. I'm high potential. Well spotted. I can just relax now then. When I talk to talent managers, I hear so many times people expressing disappointment about the individuals in their talent pools and how little energy they put into their development. It's almost as if they've already arrived once they're in the talent pool. It's a little bit like Pareto's law, I think, the 80-20 rule, that says, for instance, 80% of the value added to your business comes from just 20% of the people. I don't have any data to support it, but it wouldn't surprise me if that rule applies to folks in talent pools as well. And of course, there are the people that haven't been tapped on the shoulder, the people not in the talent pool, who may be perhaps motivated to pursue their career elsewhere. So where do we go from here then, in which case? What else can we do? So what I want to talk you through now is perhaps a slightly different approach, thinking about looking at a talent stream, a more ongoing process rather than putting people into defined talent pools. So that's perhaps the basic principle behind perhaps a new way of looking at emerging talent. So let's look at box one here first of all. So self-nomination process is a great signpost that this is a very inclusive process and open to anyone who wants to put their hand up, who feels they have more to offer to the business. And I can understand how that can provoke some anxiety for the organisation. How many people are going to apply? How do we manage their expectations? Well, there's lots of ways to do that. There are ways to ensure that this process is much more self-selecting. And what we do is we actually build in challenges. First of all, we need to be very clear about what the expectations are upon people who progress onto the programme, that they do need to work hard, they do need to devote time to it, and that will be expected of them. We may get them to spend a good few hours completing an application form as this first step. They may need to go and engage and find a sponsor. They may have to get a line manager to endorse them, to complete an endorsement form. There are a number of ways of ensuring that only particularly committed, high potential people will actually follow through from stage one. Typically, we would expect at least a line manager endorsement with some light touch criteria. Of course, this is a good way to engage with the line manager as well. So there are ways of controlling numbers coming onto the program here, and a lot of it is about testing the commitment of people to actually follow through into the process. Now, the next phase, number 2 here, we're calling a kind of diagnostic phase, and this could take many different forms. Now, remembering that these are perhaps relatively inexperienced people, they're going to benefit from any sort of number of feedback tools, really, including perhaps a psychometric report, a personality profile that's geared particularly towards their leadership development. There's a number of very sort of resource light tools that we can put in here. We may want to put in perhaps an interview. It could be workplace feedback, a 180 questionnaire. We could challenge people to go actually out and interview people to get feedback. Number of different things that we can deploy here to whatever that diagnostic process is. The idea is that it produces some useful learning and feedback for the individual that they can then use to inform and create a PDP, a personal development plan, into number 3 here. Now, the real assessment piece comes into play in number 4 here, where we actually get people to undertake some workplace-based activities to develop themselves or to initiate some changes in the organisation. And it's on point 5, we're calling this a deep dive interview. This is where the assessment really happens, the assessment with perhaps a capital A. This is where we assess people in what they've actually done over this period. How engaged with the process have they been? How proactive have they been? What have they learned? What have they decided about their future career path? And then at the end of this, this is where we may start to stream different individuals according to their specific development needs and career ambitions and into further development options. So how is this more sort of longitudinal self-nominating approach adding value? It's more inclusive, obviously a wider scope of people. Of course, it doesn't stop you nudging people or tapping people on the shoulder to encourage them to apply. There may well be high potential people who perhaps don't recognise this within themselves yet, but at least the programme is open to all and fair. Greater opportunity. It's not a one-off event. It's not about people throwing themselves in at the deep end of an assessment centre. There's greater opportunity, perhaps our more reflective, introverted colleagues to shine. Because it's workplace-based, we're involving the managers throughout the process. Managers are engaged. What we're also finding in our research is that managers feel they have a much greater visibility of people in the programme. We're not taking people off into a venue outside of work. We're actually encouraging people to get involved in workplace activities, to engage with other senior leaders, to learn from them in the business.